Hello, my excellent biologists. So if you're in my class, we have already done a whole unit on ecology and behavior. Now we're going back to the beginning. So we're going to our chapter 1, all right? So hopefully down in the bottom, you picked up the group shared notes, 2 columns, column 1, wherever you see the yellow highlighted part, that's where you need to type in the words that I'm providing here in our discussion. And column 2, I would add in pictures and images or things from the presentation. You have a link to the presentation in the group shared notes to help you augment your notes, all right? Okay, I'm going to make myself a little bit smaller and go in presentation mode. Oh, I'm in the middle again. All right, so, stay. So this is chapter 1, and let me get a pointer going. And we're starting biology just basically means the study of life, right? So bio is life, logi, we're studying life and all the interactions. Now, when you look at this picture right now, my students, you know this is a form of competition, right? There's 2 males competing. So would that be interspecific or intraspecific? Do you remember? So they're competing. Yes, they are the same species, but they're competing within the males. So that would be intraspecific competition. Just, a little throwback there. All right. So when we talk about life, we have the characteristics of life, characteristics of life. And I know this is in your notes. Oh, by the way, 1.1, the characteristics of life, biology is the study of life. So just bear with me on this. You will have an opportunity to fill in all your notes. I want to teach you a little song to remember all the characteristics of life, all right? And I need to make myself bigger in order to do that. Okay, so here's how it goes, okay? So do this with me, you ready? Living things are organized, made of cells. Now I'm going, living things are organized like I'm looking through file folders and I'm organizing. I know it's lame, but just do it. Living things are organized, made of cells. They acquire materials and energy. They maintain homeostasis. So you could think of like if you ate something sugary, sometimes your blood sugar level would go up, you secrete some insulin, it goes back down. If your temperature gets too hot, you might sweat, cool back down, you might shiver. That's maintaining homeostasis, okay? From the top, living things are organized, made of cells. They acquire materials and energy. They maintain homeostasis, they respond to stimuli, and reproduce, no pelvic thrust, okay? And reproduce, They grow, okay, because all living things grow, and develop, whichever way you develop. They adapt, these are like feathers, right? And die. Okay, from the top, do it with me. Living things are organized, made of cells. They acquire materials and energy. They maintain homeostasis. They respond to stimuli and reproduce. They grow and develop, and they adapt and die. Yay! Okay, so those are the characteristics of living things. All right. And so that's what you're going to put on your notes. But just pause for a second and see if you can fill in your notes without looking at the next page, okay? I want to see if you could do that. So pause, try to do it, see if you remember the whole song, all right? So here are the whole notes if you need them, okay? Again, pause and you can fill in characteristics of life. Okay, now the very first characteristic of life is that living things are organized. So what we need to talk about next is how are they organized? We're going to start from the smallest molecules and go all the way up. All right, so here, this shows you how things are organized. So we start with atoms, right? So that could be like oxygen or carbon or nitrogen, right? Atoms, and then those atoms are going to build molecules. They could be simple molecules like water and CO2 and carbon dioxide, or more complex molecules, right? You could have carbohydrates and lipids, and you could have nucleic acids and proteins. So atoms build molecules. Molecules build organelles. Now, I need a little side note. See how it's in parentheses? The reason why it's in parentheses is not all cells have organelles. Prokaryotic cells, No organelles. They have membranes, they have DNA, but they don't have membrane enclosed DNA like a nucleus or mitochondria, right? Powerhouse of the cell or chloroplast. So that's why I have it in parentheses. If we're going to do it in sequence, organelles come before cells, but not all cells have it. Okay? So atoms, you're thinking atoms, molecules, organelles, and when we say cells, I want you to go like this because that's where life starts. Okay? Atoms, molecules, organelles, cells. Then you have tissues. Okay? Then those tissues work together to build organs. So I'm making a heart. And then organ systems, and then you have an organism. Okay, then you put several of the same organism together. You have a population, several different populations, right? We've already learned this. You have a community. Then you have an ecosystem when you start to put in abiotic factors that we've learned about, right? Like rain, temperature, weather, right? Ecosystem, biosphere. Okay, so let's see if we can do that all together, right? Okay, so living things are organized, made of cells. How are they organized? Atoms, molecules, organelles, cells, tissues, organs, organ systems, organisms, populations, community, ecosystem, biosphere. Yay! So living things are organized, made of cells. They acquire materials and energy. They maintain homeostasis. They respond to stimuli and reproduce. They grow and develop, and they adapt and die. Boom! Okay, so you already know all that. I'm so proud of you. Okay, make myself smaller. So hopefully you put organization of life if you need to. Just hit pause real quick and type those up. Atom, molecule, organelle, all the way up. Now, as you go up in these levels of organization from atoms to molecules to organelles, think about it, right? We've talked about this a little bit. Like one ant can't do much if you had just one single ant, right? But if you had thousands of ants, you could build like a little bridge, right, between up to a tree or a tree branch. One organ, like a heart, right, may not be able to do much, but if you put it with arteries and capillaries and veins, right, you have a whole organ system. It can do more. So as you level up, you get new unique properties. Sometimes you can't even predict them, right? So those are called emergent properties, and that's what I thought the next slide was. But sorry, that is a little bit later, but I just pre-taught it to you for some reason. So here, let me scroll down. I'll get it for you right now. All these slides. So sorry. Oh, you know what? We're going to go back. Just forgive me. It's late. I can't do that. Okay, sorry. So I forgot. I had a bunch of pictures for you in here just to go through the characteristics of life. Sorry. So living things are organized. We just went through that. They acquire materials and energy. So he's eating his pancakes. Here, this is a carnivore chasing an herbivore, right? Acquiring nutrients and energy. They maintain homeostasis. The squirrel is sweating after a workout. If she goes outside and it's cold, she will shiver. That will help her maintain homeostasis. Hopefully she's going to drink more water. We respond to stimuli. It could be ice cream. It could be how you doing. It could be something we're afraid of. That's responding to stimuli. This is another way to respond to stimuli is behavior, right? So it's how you could be how organisms interact with each other, like one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish, or, right, this is also behavior. So this plant is working its way right towards the light. That is a type of behavior too. It's responding to stimuli. Okay, we reproduce, right? Now, he will do sexual reproduction, so he needs a partner, a joining of a sperm and egg, right, in order to make that all happen. Okay, and then grow and reproduce. So you can see this seedling is growing all the way into a tree, grow and reproduce. Okay, now this is what I was talking about. Emergent properties. So each level of organization as you go up, atom, molecule, organelle, cell, brings with it new properties. So on emergent properties, put each level of organization acquires new properties. All right, excellent. Okay, the last box of 1.1 that we also need to talk about is that living organisms can change over time because different traits they may have are more adaptive for the environment that they're in, right? So, adaptations, when you look at this family right here, right, what kind of things do they have? They have wings, right? Do they use those wings for flying? No, they do not. What do they use their wings for? Swimming, right? Because for them, that's where their food is. So to swim would be a better use of those wings. And so they're adapted. Those that survive and reproduce had wings that were better for swimming than flying. They've got a lot of fur, they've got a lot of fat, right? So those are all adaptations that they have to survive. So this is just like a little joke, right? Do these organisms have the best adaptations now for this environment? No. Okay, so when we talk about change over time, okay, and we talk about living organisms, that's just evolution. So, for instance, if you were, let's say, a salamander and you were living just outside of a cave, and occasionally predators would come, so you'd go a little bit deeper into the cave and then a little deeper into the cave, and eventually your family lives inside the cave all the time. You never leave the cave. Are you going to need eyes when you are in the cave? Probably not, right? So those eyes would wither. You wouldn't have any resources towards those eyes because it wouldn't do you any good for your surviving inside that cave. So you are adapting to your new environment. When organisms change over time, that's just called evolution. And when nature is selecting that, natural selection, okay, that is the mechanism for the change over time. Now, there are other things that can cause evolution, but adaptations are a result of natural selection. You can have chance that can affect it. You know, you can have organisms immigrating or emigrating from your population. You could have a small population size. Those are all things that could change your population and cause it to evolve. But natural selection is selecting for adaptations that best help your organism or your population to survive. So on your notes, adaptations are modifications that make organisms better able to function in a particular environment, better able to function in a particular environment. Evolution is descent with modification over time, descent with modification over time. And then natural selection is a mechanism for evolution. The environment is selecting which traits are going to be passed on because organisms with these traits are the ones that survive and reproduce, Okay, now there was a lot that we talked about in there, right? But we just kind of touched on a few things that are key aspects to biology. The next thing we're going to talk about is if we have all of this life, then how do we organize it? How do we classify it? And so this is just an introduction to the classification of life, right? And so when you talk about that, you can talk about taxonomy, and taxonomy is the discipline of identifying and grouping organisms according to certain rules. And now classification really reflects evolution or the phylogeny, how species have changed over time. So put your definition down there for taxonomy, the discipline of identifying and grouping organisms according to certain rules, and that reflects evolution. Okay, and then the next thing I want to talk to you about are the groups of classification. Like the first thing is you could take all of life and sort it into 3 bins. Okay, here's your all of life on the whole planet. Doesn't matter what you name for me, all of life we can support into 3 categories. Those 3 categories are called domains. All right, those 3 categories are called domains. Now, the domain that we live in is eukarya because we are eukaryotes. We have membrane enclosed organelles. But once you just take that one basket, that one domain, eukarya, you can break that into kingdoms. So let me show you on this next slide what I mean. Okay. Let me go over in the corner so I don't get in the way. Okay, so domains. Remember, there's only 3 domains out there. I haven't taught you the other 2, but the other 2 are archaea and bacteria, and those are both prokaryotes. Put a pin in that. I'm going to talk about it in just a minute. Okay, so the domain we are in is eukarya. And look, corn is also in the same because corn and humans are both made out of eukaryotic cells who have membrane enclosed organelles. But the kingdom is the next classification. And the kingdom that we're in is the animal kingdom. That makes sense to me, right? And then corn are in plants. Now notice from the phylums on, we're also, I mean, from the kingdoms all the way down, we are different. I want to just focus on humans for just a minute. That would be one classification, top to bottom that I want you to know, and I'm going to help you learn it, okay? So we are in the animal kingdom. Now, there's lots of organisms in the animal kingdom, spiders and moths and lizards and snakes, right? Those are all in the animal kingdom. But within that animal kingdom, the next group down, we're getting more and more exclusive, okay, are the phylums. The phylum that we belong to is Chordata. That's because during our development, we have what's called a notochord in our development. Now, I know we are vertebrates, but that is actually a subphylum. Underneath Chordata is a subphylum Vertebrata that we belong to. I'm not going to hold you to that. Okay, so our domain is Eukarya. Our kingdom is the animal kingdom. Our phylum is Chordata. Now, put a pin in that and just stick here to the categories. It goes domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Now, to learn that order, one little mnemonic you can use, okay, is did King Philip come over for good soup? Okay, did King Philip come over for good soup? Domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. All right, so we have domain, we already learned it, Eukarya. The kingdom, animal kingdom, you're going to remember that. Phylum, Chordata. If it helps you, maybe think PC like a PC computer or being politically correct. Phylum, Chordata, so you make that connection. The class that we're in, you know what? If we were in class right now, I'd be like, look around, look at all the mammals that we have in this classroom. So I'd say class Mammalia. It's a class of mammals. Now, what makes a mammal is that we have hair and mammary glands. Now, females in a binary world have active mammary glands. Males, you still have nipples, right? You still have nipples. And because at that point in your development, when the nipples were forming, didn't know if you were going to be male or female. Okay, so we are class Mammalia. The order, okay, that we are in, and remember there are going to be several orders within the class, just like there's several classes within the phylum. The order that we're in is primates. And I know this is lame, but students always remember it. I always go, no monkey. Okay, no monkey. So you remember like you're ordering a primate around. I know, silly. The family we're in is Hominidae. And the way I remember that, especially now during COVID, the family is Hominidae. The family is Hominidae, family Hominidae. And then genus, I don't think you'll have any problem with that. Genus is Homo sapien. All right, so on your classification categories, I want you to write the classification categories, domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, and I want you to write man's classification in parentheses after each one of those. So domain, Eukarya, kingdom, Animalia. So if you need to, pause, okay, and do that real quick. All right, now moving on, take a look. This is just telling you what the characteristics are, okay, of each one of these. Hair and mammary glands, order primates were adapted to climb trees, family Hominidae to walk erect, large brain for Homo, body proportions of modern humans. And technically we're Homo sapiens sapien, okay? We are a sub species of that. All right, so hopefully you have that all filled in. Next, go. I wanted to show you this picture so you could see here. Look at all of these organisms that are in Kingdom Animalia. Grizzly bear, black bear, giant panda, red fox, all of these, right? A sea star. These are all in the animal kingdom, okay? Then of those, phylum Chordata, who doesn't get to be in our club anymore, right? In phylum Chordata, we lose the starfish. And the reason, I'll tell you, they are in phylum Echinodermata. Okay, so then we move to class Mammalia with the hair, right, and the mammary glands. We lose the snake, right? Then order Carnivora, and then we have family Ursidae, genus Ursus, and then Ursus arctos. So this is, what is that? It's polar bear, right? So you get more and more exclusive as you go down, as you go towards the species, and more inclusive as you move up. Okay, now I told you there were 3 baskets you could put all life in, and I told you we were in eukarya, okay? So these are eukaryotes. Now, eukaryotes, within the domain of eukarya, there are 4 kingdoms within that domain. We're one of those, right? We're the animal kingdom, right? But there's also plants that are eukaryotic. They're built out of eukaryotic cells. Fungi are eukaryotic, like a mushroom, right? And protists. Protists are generally unicellular eukaryotes, but there are some that kind of live colonial together. It's really classification. There's some books that might say there's 9 kingdoms in there that can break out some of the plants, etc. We're not going to worry about that. We're just going to say within eukarya, that domain, we have protists, we have plants, fungi, and animalia. All right, now bacteria and archaea, okay, both of those are prokaryotic cells. They have no membrane enclosed organelles. They have DNA, but it's just in a nucleoid region. It's not within a nucleus. They are smaller cells. And we'll be spending more time about cells in a later chapter. But for now, what I want you to know, the difference between these, they're both prokaryotic, is bacteria kind of everywhere. Look at here's cyanobacteria. We learned about him with, when we talked last chapter, maybe nitrogen fixation, right? And archaea are prokaryotes, but they are extremophiles. They live where like it's really salty, or like if you've ever been to Yellowstone and you've looked at those pools of water, they live in that. They live in cow rectums and make methane. Halophiles live where it's really salty. Okay, so on your notes, go to domains. Bacteria are prokaryotic. They lack membrane-bound organelles. They're structurally simple, but metabolically complex. Okay, but metabolically complex. We're going to learn more about them later. Archaea are also prokaryotic. The differences between bacteria is they organize their DNA a little bit differently, and their cell walls and membranes are different, and we'll talk about that, and they are known as extremophiles. Okay, and then next, eukarya, those are all eukaryotic. So here, let me just show you this. Okay, so look at these 3. Could you predict which is which, right? So unicellular prokaryotes capable of surviving in extreme environments such as those with high salinity and temperature, what would you say? Hopefully you're saying archaea. Okay, unicellular prokaryotes adapted to living most everywhere. Hopefully you're saying bacteria. Okay, and unicellular and multicellular eukaryotes containing 4 kingdoms, Protista, plantae, fungi, and animalia. Hopefully you're saying eukarya. All right, so here you can see, okay, yay. All right, so when you look at here, you can see domain archaea, domain bacteria, both of these are prokaryotic. Here are the 4 kingdoms of eukarya. So there's not, they are found everywhere. This is like a bacillus, like E. coli. This is in a lot of your fecal material. It's got a lot of E. coli in it. This is domain bacteria. This is domain archaea. Remember, like I said, extreme environments. Okay, and this is eukarya. Here are the 4 kingdoms. I want you to know some basic generalizations about the 4 kingdoms. So for protists, which is this first column right here, and it's in your notes, okay, they are usually unicellular, okay? Some are autotrophs and some are heterotrophs. Some are autotrophs and some are heterotrophs. All right, for plants, it's the next one in your notes right here. For plants, the key thing you really need to know is they are multicellular and they do photosynthesis, right? They are autotrophs. So plants, multicellular, autotrophs, do photosynthesis. All right, your next one in your notes is fungi. So here's the fungi one right here. Fungi, they are usually multicellular, but there are unicellular ones like yeast. And I want you to write that they are absorptive heterotrophs, okay? In comparison, we are ingestive heterotrophs. We have to put food in our mouths, but they are absorptive heterotrophs. And last, animalia down here, where it says ingest food, we are ingestive heterotrophs, and we are always multicellular. We are always multicellular. All right. Then last, remember how we said Homo sapien, that was our genus species name? Okay, well, that was done by a man named Linnaeus, who came up with binomial nomenclature. And he used a language that was dead. By dead, it meant that nobody was speaking it, and so it wasn't going to change over time. Okay, and so when you use binomial nomenclature, you use the genus species name. Okay, and they're always written in italics or they're underlined. No two species can have the exact same name, right? You could have subspecies, right? But no two species can have the exact same name. So you can have a lot with with the same genus, but the species name that comes after it is a delineation off of that, and that would be very specific. So scientific name is binomial nomenclature, and it's genus and then species. And then I want you to put Linnaeus. It's right here. This is the guy, the scientist that came up with it. All right. So that was it for part one. You just want to make sure you know about the characteristics of life, the organization of life, about adaptations and evolution, and then the classification life. How do we classify it? And then in part two, which will be our next video, we're going to talk about the organization of the biosphere and some science practices that we need to be familiar with. All right? Okay, that's it.